Okay, you are looking at day 7 of Eric's 1962 Chevy pickup. Today I'm going to be finishing up the door here, so I'll show you how to do that. And then if it doesn't rain on me, I'll go outside and I'll take care of the rocker panel so you can see that too. So last time you saw me finish all this stuff up. Another little trick that I like to do sometimes is I'll get a block sander like this, and I'll go ahead and shoot just some black primer on here, and then go ahead and just a couple of sands back and forth like that. Of course, all of the high spots, they'll be sanded off and nice and shiny. All your low spots will still be down and dark. So I can go ahead and play with this a little bit more before I finish it up and get it even straighter. Now this here is known as a slap hammer. It just has a larger area, and you can flatten out panels a little bit easier with this than just a smaller. So you just keep doing that until you just can't stand to do it anymore. Now on the inside edge where the weld's all going down, I'll shoot a little bit extra fat right there. So last time in this section I got a little bit more bow than I like, so I'm going to go ahead and use these to make sure that it's a little bit more lined up. Okay, again, the bottom's down here right at the very edge. A lot of times they don't line right up right away, so what I do is I just kind of split the difference between either side. So a little over on one side, a little over on the other. Okay, so we'll get a couple of tack welds started, and then I'm going to go ahead and gently roll these sides down and check my arch. So I want to make sure that my curvature is right before I finish welding this off. If I weld this into a certain place and then try to manipulate the curvature, it's a little bit tougher. So I don't want to start, everything's looking good. I don't want to start welding this stuff off yet. We'll get all this here secured up, and then all the areas that line up nice and easy, we'll secure those. Then everybody that's off, we can go ahead and manipulate those even. So on the sides you'll see me just do a continual weld instead of spot welds every 3-4 inches. The reason for that is because when you have a lot of bending metal, it makes it stronger and you can do more welding like that. Plus, if metal is hot or warm, it makes it more pliable and easier to work with. So I can get this whole area heated up, so to speak, and then I can work with it easier. Also, while I'm welding something that goes up and down, I'll start at the top and then I'll work my way down. Reason being is that when you do that weld up there, gravity will kind of bring it down and it gives you a nice easier weld. So since I can't get behind this to hammer on dolly, what I'm just going to do is set it on the ground. I'll use my dolly here and I'll try to hit it from the back side to kind of bring this up just a little bit. There was a brace that was down here. You're going to want to drill a couple of holes. You want to go through the first piece of metal. You want to go just a little bit into the second piece of metal, the brace down there, and then go ahead and do a couple of spot welds there too. So like I said before, the large mass right here looks flat, but it's not. There's a bit of a curvature kind of thing going on. It is, except at the very bottom right down here. So before I finish off this very bottom, I'm going to take out the straight edge and I'm going to make sure I'm straight. So now I'll switch to a 120 flat grit and just kind of smooth out the rest of the stuff. Now I'll just go ahead and let this dry up some. There's a few extra holes welded up or drilled through at the top of the door. So after it cools off, I'll spin it all around and take care of those too. So let's take a look at what we got. So you can see here, all this is molded in. See, this is pretty flat, but it does tuck in a little bit more because, again, we can't get behind a hammer it all that much. You can see this is all looking good. There's the front of the door there. So you can see that's pretty nice. Okay, now we'll go ahead and get started on the rocker panel. The reason we do our door and our front fender first is because it is possible that you could get it off a little bit. It might be a little bit longer, might be a little bit shorter, what have you. But nonetheless, when you put in the rocker panel, you should be able to compensate for any small imperfections you have. So what we're going to do before we take this off is just like everything else. We'll measure up a bit and mark where everything's at, and then we can go ahead and cut it out. You also want to note that this gap that goes right in here, where your wires for the fuel tank go, and maybe the rear lights, the rubber piece goes down here. You want to make sure that you maintain this gap right here. It's usually about a ½ an inch or so, maybe 3/8 of an inch. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll cut out the basic mass of this right here, being careful not to cut any of the supports underneath, and then I'll go ahead and drill out the spot welds and gingerly remove the metal that's left so that we don't do any damage underneath the metal. Okay, so when I cut this out, I really should have done the bottom first, because if you do all the top cutting first and then you're doing the bottom, then it can fall on you when you're cutting it out. But you can see that the rust in here was pretty good, so it's a good idea we did this. Here you can see how much I cut off. So you have to stay about an inch or so to this side of this, otherwise you'll start cutting into here, and we don't want that. So you can see I've just got a little bit left down here and a little bit left on here. So now I'll grind off a little bit of the paint so that it will show my spot welds, and then I can go ahead and drill and or cut those off. If you're going to cut them off, like say right here's a spot weld, so I can just cut the middle a little bit on each side of that spot weld, and then this and right over on this other spot weld, so then this middle piece will come out, and then I can just simply grind the little pieces of metal that are left. But spot weld cutter is a little bit easier way to do it. Okay, so that's what your spot weld cutter looks like. This little thing right here, this point at the top, that'll go into the middle and kind of hold it steady, but it bounces around a bit. So I usually use a nice 1/8 inch pilot hole first. Remember that you don't want your speed on the drill to be very high. You want to have it about 1,000 RPMs or so. You want to saw through the thing. If you're going too fast, it'll just kind of skim over the top and it'll dull the blade out really fast. Just drilling past my first piece of metal. You don't want to drill all the way through, of course. And a lot of times you'll know when you made it through the first piece and just into the second piece, because a little bit of rusty dust will come out. So now I'll go ahead and grind off all of these leftover tips. I'll grind off some of the rust and junk like that. So now I'll go ahead and wire wheel it. I'm going to do it with a variable speed grinder. I'll have my RPMs down low. This way when I'm grinding on there, it won't catch on the corners and tear out of my hand. Okay, so now I'll take some rust mort. Rust mort's basically just phosphoric acid and a few other little things. But the main ingredient is phosphoric acid. What it does is, if you have light surface rust on there, it'll clean that off. But if you've got a pitted rust in there, what it'll do is it'll convert it over to, I don't know, iron oxide or something like that, I forget which. But the moral of the story is that it renders it inert. It mellows it out and won't come back to haunt you, hopefully. Our cab corner's looking really good. They're really susceptible to rust, so I'm going to go ahead and shoot some in this corner, and then I'll shoot the entire thing. I'll let it soak up for a little bit. I'll do some scrubbing on it, and I'll do that a couple of times until it looks like it's all taken care of. Then we'll go ahead and we'll wash it off really good with water, because if you leave the muriatic acid on, paint will not adhere to that. We have to get it off, and water neutralizes the acid. So you really should wear gloves. I don't have any right now, and wear a mask. Okay, so I'm gonna let that sit for, I don't know, 15-20, and then I'll come back and wash it all off. Alright, so while I'm waiting for the acid to dry up, I'm just going to go ahead and start messing around with some of the electrical. This here is a little bit weirded out right here, so I'm going to show you how to replace this jazz right here nice and easy, and not have this ugly stuff here. These type of connectors right here are really known for giving you problems in the future, so I'll start messing with that stuff a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and unbolt this from the firewall so I can work on it a little bit easier. And but I'll be showing you a little bit more electrical stuff when I finish up with the rest. You can see how nice and shiny all the good metal is, and then where the rust is turned black, that's where it's been converted over to an inert situation. But here where it's still kind of brown, we want to let that dry off and put a little bit more of the phosphoric acid on there until this stuff turns black. Okay, so that's it for today. Tomorrow I'll start on the other rocker panel. Maybe I'll mess with the electrical some and this and that. I'm waiting for a few patch panels from Brothers that won't be due until Thursday or so. So we'll take care of a few other things while we're waiting for that. So we'll see y'all tomorrow.